Hey, great to have you here. So we just recently got the trailer for Dexter Resurrection, and I want to give my thoughts on it, kind of my breakdown overall, running through a lot of the photos that we got and screenshots for the trailer itself. So I'm going to kind of run through those and share some screenshots and my thoughts along the way. So let's not waste any time. We'll just jump right into the actual trailer. And as I said, just give my thoughts along the way here. So we start things off with Dexter, presumably here in this hospital bed. And he's recovering from the events from the end of New Blood, where, let's be honest, he died, but they're bringing him back for Resurrection. So I guess that's kind of the quip of the title. But Dexter's now back. He's in this hospital. He's recovering. And we just see him in this bed. And he's sitting there and he's just giving a monologue to himself. And he's saying something along the lines of, "Somebody once told me you have to go through hell to achieve resurrection." And then he opens his eyes and he says, "Hallelujah." So he has gone through hell and he has been resurrected. So he's back alive at this point in time. He's awake in this hospital bed. And then he winds up seeing Batista. So if you remember, at the end of New Blood, Angela called Batista because she found him at this New York conference and told him about the whole Bay Harbor butcher thing. So Batista was coming to Iron Lake at the end of New Blood, but obviously we had things kind of conclude there. Well, now I guess Dexter's in this hospital and we have, sure enough, Batista here waiting for him to wake up to talk to him. And there's some dialogue here where Batista's like, "Hey, I thought you were a ghost when I saw you, man." And then he briefly mentions that Angela told him that Dexter was the Bay Harbor butcher. And Dexter gives kind of the classic just look at him like, "I'm not really sure what I'm going to do in this situation. How am I going to get out of this?" So he looks at Batista a little funny there. And then we next see him in this bathroom where he's opening up the window and trying to escape. Not sure if this is a misdirect, if he'll actually wind up going out the window or not, but sure enough, he does wind up taking off in this car outside in the same clothes. So it's very possible he does wind up going out the window. But at the same time, I'm thinking, you just got accused of all these murders and you're waking up. You don't have police surveillance on you or any kind of detail of any kind surrounding you for when you eventually wake up. Feels a little odd. So they're going to have to explain that a little bit more as far as why is Dexter kind of on his own, unless you want to say Batista's the person that's supposed to be watching him, but not sure that really makes sense. So curious to see what the explanation is going to be for when Dexter starts things off at the beginning of Resurrection in episode 1. But either way, we have him escaping here and leaving Batista and taking off in this car. And then we cut to this skyline of New York City where it says Dexter lives. And then we get a little bit more brighter, cheerier music where it's something like Back in the New York Groove, I think is the song, where it's a lot more upbeat compared to what we typically get with a Dexter type of show. So I don't know if that's going to be the tone of the entire season or if that's just kind of what they were going for with this trailer. But they're very much pitching out there the big New York City, the big life, and that kind of stuff, where Dexter is kind of hitting Broadway, if you will, where he's going to New York and becoming a new man, I guess. So from there, we just see more skyline shots and saying new city, kind of new Dexter at this point in time. And then we get these newspapers where we have these dark passenger articles where it's talking about these killing sprees made by somebody. I'm not thinking this is Dexter. I'm thinking somebody else in New York happens to be having the title Dark Passenger, and they're on this killing spree, and Dexter's kind of learning about this. Maybe he's going to wind up going after this person. Not entirely sure, but there's a lot of information regarding this person who's killing a lot of people. Here we also get Dark Passenger strikes again, so it definitely feels like this killer on the loose in New York is wreaking havoc across the board. And then going along with New City, they call out New Secrets. Not really sure what that's going to be, but we'll have to see there. And then we see Dexter just kind of looking around at night with a flashlight, so just kind of exploring maybe. And then we see him out and about in this all black outfit where he has his hood up, glasses on. So he's trying to look inconspicuous, but he's kind of standing out very obviously with that outfit where he's I don't know, he looks like maybe he's in Central Park or some kind of that type of environment where he's maybe stalking his prey, or he's just learning about somebody. He's just out there exploring and finding out what they're about. If the same scene though, we do shortly after there see him get in a car with Uma Thurman's character. So maybe he's just waiting there for her to show up and that's kind of their meeting location. So he gets in the car and gets taken to this really nice location where they're getting off the elevator together and they're meeting, I guess. So Uma Thurman's apparently this character named Charlie, who's the head of security for this guy, Leon Prater, which is, Peter Dinklage plays Leon Prater, which is this billionaire. And we see Peter Dinklage here in his really nice home and Dexter meeting him and shaking hands with him. So feels like they're going to meet up, and Dexter's trying to feel out maybe what's going on with this character because there's a little bit of dialogue back and forth. Charlie mentions he likes to own things, and Dexter's like, "You really like serial killers." And we have Peter Dinklage say something like "best of the best in every field," and that may be alluding to the different serial killers that we get presented with. So from here, once again, we're shown Uma Thurman, but after that, we have the first character we have here is Eric Stonestreet playing as Al, who's this Midwestern killer named Rapunzel, apparently. A lot of this information came out in a USA Today article, so we have details on each of these killers, but this is Al playing Rapunzel, this I guess, Midwestern serial killers. So it seems like there's going to be this kind of collection of serial killers all meeting up at this one location. I'm thinking the trailer could have a misdirect here, maybe not, but it seems like they're trying to allude to all these serial killers being in one location in this trailer, but they're showing them in back-to-back scenes popping up one at a time in separate moments, so it feels like they're not necessarily all actually in one scene together, but showing them back-to-back makes it look like they are. We do have Peter Dinklage say that they're going to be showing up soon, so that could be the case that they're not all actually in the same room together, but not exactly sure. Trailers can be misleading at times. Even with the New Blood trailer, actually prior to that coming out, they had scenes in that trailer that didn't happen in the show, so you never fully know with these. But after Eric Stonestreet's character, we have David Dastmalchian here, who's playing a character named Gareth, who's the Gemini killer. And then after that, we have Neil Patrick Harris playing Lowell, who's the tattoo collector, who's this like anesthesiologist. And then finally, we have Kristen Ritter as Mia, who plays Lady Vengeance, who's a wine specialist. This trailer gives the impression that there's a few more one-on-one moments between Dexter and her in this season, so we'll have to see if that actually is the case, but these are the 4 characters or serial killers that are being collected by Peter Dinklage alongside Dexter at this location. So we'll have to see exactly what the point of that is. I'm not sure if Dexter's like MO is going to be he's going to kill them all himself, because typically, as you know, Dexter kills serial killers. So I'm not really sure why we're collecting all these people in one location. We'll have to see there. It seems like this billionaire is just kind of a crazy guy overall. And then after a bit more dialogue between Dexter and Peter Dinklage here, we have a new scene where Dexter is somewhat in a kill outfit where he has what appears to be like an apron on at least, and maybe he's preparing to put someone on his table. That's something I was a little bit worried about for this season, because Dexter in theory should be on the run or on trial this season. In my opinion, if we're trying to be realistic, like he can't be just out in the open grabbing people and killing them. I get the point maybe is this is New York and you can do all kinds of crazy stuff and not get caught, but I don't want them to get too insane with it. I realize Dexter in some capacity is a little bit unrealistic with all that he's kind of gotten away with, but for the most part, I feel like the show was grounded in a lot of ways, and I don't want it to turn into something like You, where you have Joe Goldberg who's doing all kinds of crazy stuff, not getting caught, and it felt like extremely unbelievable, the stuff that happened in that show. And us having Dexter now in New York, I know he was already in New York State, but being in New York City now, that's a kind of a comparison between him and Joe from You already, so let's hope we don't get too silly with what they do in this season, because I'm a little concerned with some parts of the trailer indicating that could be the case. We just get a few more shots here of Dexter kind of just out and about at night, trying to glance and maybe scope somebody out. And then once again, back with having somebody maybe on his table here. And yeah, just back and forth. Some more shots of him just doing some surveillance. This feels like this could be the new look for Dexter. I'll talk about it a little bit later on towards the end of the trailer. But it definitely has a different vibe as far as the outfit. It feels like he wears a lot of black specifically in this season. Then we see a little bit of maybe story here, but not really sure what it reveals. We have this envelope with some money on it where it seems like Uma Thurman is potentially delivering this. It could be a misdirect once again, but there's something going on with this delivery here. And then we see Uma Thurman pretty much indicating something has been handled, so I'm not really sure what's going on here. It feels like there's some aspect it's like a spies type situation where we're doing a lot of undercover-y type of things, so I'm not really sure. I feel like I'm concerned about this season indicating that, like, New York, you can pretty much do anything, and it's like the Wild West of just vigilantes and all kinds of chaos, because there's some indication of that here. Next up, we get a little bit of a pivot here, so we're back with Batista again, so it's great to see him in more than just the opening. I'm hoping we get him frequently throughout, not just in some smaller parts. Like, we got a decent amount of him, I guess, in New Blood, but more of him, as long as it makes sense for the plot, would make sense. On top of that, I would like some other returning characters, but we do at least have Batista here. And then we have Harrison, so it seems like Harrison's going to be kind of involved. Like, maybe Dexter goes to New York City because he wants to follow up with Harrison. Not positive there, but Harrison appears to be working at this hotel. And this next scene is a little bit confusing. You have what appears to be Harrison dragging somebody's body back into this kitchen area, and without much context, you kind of feel like, okay, Harrison, are you up to no good here? Not positive. They're definitely trying to allude to that, because the next scene we have him grabbing a knife as well, so I don't know if it's just like Harrison's dark passenger trying to tempt him, and maybe he doesn't actually wind up doing anything, but there's a lot of misdirects potentially here with Harrison doing some bad stuff. Maybe he actually is going to be following Dexter's path and like killing people, but I'm thinking they're kind of leading towards that being the case, so I'm not sure necessarily that it will be, because trailers shouldn't be showing us everything. You have him checking this guy out, though, at this hotel. I don't know who maybe this guy's relation to himself is. Maybe it's his boss. Who knows? But you have this guy walking out of the hotel, and Harrison's kind of just checking him out, wondering what's going on here. And then what I'm hoping is an awesome moment here, having Harry back as Dexter's kind of conscience, if you will, where he's talking to him and just going back and forth with him on what makes sense to do in certain situations. We obviously in New Blood had Deb as that role. Doesn't seem like Jennifer Carpenter's going to be in this show. Kind of disappointed with that, although I didn't really love her in New Blood because she was just constantly pestering Dexter and kind of belittling him, whereas Harry was typically trying to get Dexter out of trouble, and it feels like a more fitting role for somebody that you're going to be frequently kind of having a dialogue with. So great to see him back here. We have what appears to be Dexter talking to him, and Dexter's like, he's tired of being careful, which I'm like, you weren't that careful last season, so I don't know about that. But it's implying that Dexter is kind of done following the code, if you will, and he's just going to be doing what he wants freely because, once again, maybe he's in New York. He can do anything. I'm hoping they don't do that, but it seems like he has the thought that there's a little bit more freedom to do what he wants at this point in time. Maybe because he almost died, he has like a new lease on life. Who knows? But we see him preparing this bag. It says like something data network here. Not exactly sure what he's preparing with this. Maybe just his like typical kill items, which does make sense. In our next scene, we have the knives on the table here. So maybe that's what he has wrapped up in that backpack. Not entirely sure. And then we have Dexter preparing what appears to be his kill table in like a hotel room, maybe, or something along those lines. So somebody's going after and putting on his table in this season. Maybe it's those people that are other serial killers. I'm hoping it's something more along those lines as opposed to doing like, hey, kill of the week, because unfortunately, where we've gone down the path with Dexter, we can't go back to him like doing the Miami, like, hey, let's just do stuff. We're not going to get caught, because he's kind of gotten so much attention put on him that he's got to be smart with what he's doing for it not to be too insane. And then next up, we have Dexter actually, putting the knife down, presumably into somebody. Maybe he's just like practicing here. Not positive because we don't see a whole lot. But then we do see there is somebody on his table that he's like talking to here. So doing the typical Dexter thing where he looks a little bit crazy and trying to kind of get the person to reveal what they did was wrong and so forth. And then in our last scene here, it's a little bit strange. We have Dexter with this like desktop setup where he has like a gaming PC next to him. And that appears to be Harry that's standing there with him. So I'm thinking that Dexter is like talking to Harry in that moment. And here's where I'm thinking this could be Dexter in his new like outfit when he's going out and trying to capture somebody, like the typical thermal that he would wear in the original series. This seems like it could be, maybe I'm wrong, but it could be the outfit that he uses for those purposes, because he's like wearing this hoodie with his glasses that we see him wearing a few times, but he's like smirking to Harry, just being like, hey, you like my outfit? So I'm thinking maybe this is something he's going to wear more frequently because it's kind of his like stealth look that he has in New York, but we'll have to see ultimately there. And then we just wrap things up with the title card here where it says streaming on July 11th. I believe there's going to be 2 episodes if they haven't changed things on that date. So going to be back-to-back episodes where I'll be putting out reviews for those. The second one may be a little bit like a day or so later just because back-to-back episodes, kind of hard to do those. I've thought about also doing live streams afterwards. Let me know if you're interested in that. But that kind of recaps the entirety of this actual trailer as far as some screenshots and some of my thoughts on it. At a high level, I'll be honest with you, I am really looking forward to Resurrection. I was pleasantly surprised with Original Sin, and I'm hoping they can recreate that magic for Resurrection. I wasn't a big fan of New Blood overall. This trailer has me a little concerned. Like the vibe of it with being like the back in New York City type thing where it's a lot upbeat, and you have Dexter kind of, as I said, they have to give a good explanation to why he's not in cuffs or like hiding from everybody, because it seems like he's pretty much out and about for the most part. I mean, he's wearing kind of stealthy things, but if they know he's the Bay Harbor Butcher, or at least that he killed the coach in the last season, people are going to be looking for him. And it seems like Peter Dinklage knows he's a serial killer, so I'm not sure. They're going to have to explain that pretty well for it to be justifiable as far as why he's maybe back doing his normal routine of putting people on his table. And the Harrison thing, I know a lot of people weren't high on Harrison for New Blood. I wasn't a big fan of his character because he was constantly just kind of like pestering Dexter as well. He was kind of doing similar to what Deb did. Maybe somewhat understandable because he obviously was kind of abandoned by Dexter, but he wasn't somebody that was overly enjoyable to have in scenes in New Blood. Hopefully with kind of things advancing a little bit here and him having like his own job, his own life now, maybe that'll be a little bit less of a factor. It seems like he's maybe going to be struggling with his own inner demons and his own dark passenger, so curious to see how that plays out. Hopefully they make that an interesting plot line, but we'll have to see there. And Batista, awesome to see. It would be great to see more people back. I was a little concerned originally with having all of these new cast members giving everyone enough face time to make the season actually like feel flushed out enough, because you have to give so many people time on screen and you have to return to our original characters too. But I'm hoping maybe they can do that with this approach, with having them each be serial killers. So maybe they're not going to be in the show too much, and it's just going to be Dexter like one-off picking them off. Who knows? But it seems like they're all kind of converging to this location. So I'm hoping we don't get too silly with that, because having all these serial killers just in like a meetup feels like a little strange. It feels like the Avengers of serial killers. Like, I'm not sure that makes a whole lot of sense, but hopefully they can kind of do the series justice. And obviously it's not going to be like Original Sin where you had the Miami vibes again. You're going to definitely have New York vibes in this, which they can do and make it effective, but just, I don't know, just don't make it too like silly is pretty much all I'm asking. We already are bringing him back after killing him off. I thought about this earlier when I watched the trailer for the first time. I'm a little concerned about, if you're familiar with horror movie franchises, a lot of times when the franchise has kind of gone over the deep end, they send somebody to space. So you have like Leprechaun in space, or Friday the 13th with Jason going to space. I don't know if this is going to be the case, but I'm a little concerned from the trailer that this is like Dexter going to space almost, where it's like, all right, we're going to kind of make this go crazy a little bit. That's not a for sure thing. It's just kind of the impression I got with some of these scenes in the trailer. But overall, I am pumped to see Michael C. Hall back. I am pumped to see Bautista back. So a lot of the things I liked from the original Dexter series are going to be great to have back here. The challenge you really have here is you can't put Pandora back in its box. You can't have Dexter be, doing the kill of the week stuff as frivolously as he could previously, because he should be kind of on high alert. But I don't know. I'm going to be cautiously optimistic. I know it sounded a little bit maybe pessimistic with some of the points I made about the trailer, but I think some of the trailer could have been a little bit better with what I was expecting for the series. And we'll have to see ultimately, though. Hopefully it winds up being a great series and a good time overall. But either way, I'll be covering, as I mentioned. And let me know your thoughts on the trailer. Maybe you really enjoyed it and you feel like the vibe of the whole New York stuff really worked for you. Would love to hear that, because, I mean, more Dexter is always awesome to have. So always pumped to have it regardless. Just hope they really nail the tone of things and make it be at least partially down to earth, I'll say. So that's just my thoughts overall. I know I've rambled on long enough here, but we got this trailer. Want to share my thoughts overall. As mentioned, share yours down in the comments below. Would love to talk more Dexter Resurrection as we kind of lead up to the series launch coming in July. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to talk to you again soon.